Hello everyone, welcome to the session. I'm Sudeshna, Assistant Professor of CSC Department. In this session, I would like to discuss about inter-process communication of operating system course. Now let's see what is inter-process communication. Now, in the previous videos, we have seen that a process is nothing but a program under execution. Now, if you have more than one process and if they want to talk to each other, then we need some mechanism that is called as inter-process communication. So basically it is used for communication between two or more processes. Now why they are actually communicating with each other? What is the need? We'll see that. Now let's see this. Processes are actually two types. One is independent processes. The next one is cooperating processes. Independent processes means these are the kind of processes where they are standalone processes kind of thing. Means they'll execute on their own without uh, any dependency on other processes. Means the processes will not share any data with the other one and it will not expect any data from the other one. Now the second category of processes are called as cooperating processes. Means these are the processes where they can't execute on their own because they are dependent on the others data or others resources kind of thing. If the process execution is dependent on the other one, then that process is called as cooperating process. Now, the IPC is involved between cooperating processes. That is when these kind of processes are communicating for exchanging the data or for exchanging the resources, we need IPC between these. Now, but that's why we are learning about IPC. Now, as I told, what is the advantage of this IPC, that is inter-process communication, means the processes can share the data, they can speed up the work, they can share the resources, and so on. Now let's see in detail what is IPC what is IPC and different IPC mechanisms. Now, like I told, cooperating processes require inter-process communication mechanism. Now, why they are doing means they have to share the data and resources, etc. Now, this IPC is actually done in many ways. Now, we'll see few of them. The first widely used are shared memory and message passing. Now let's see what are these two. Shared memory first. Now, shared memory, from the name itself we can get some idea that when two processes are talking to each other, then they'll share some part of memory for their communication. That is, a particular region of memory shared between cooperating processes for exchanging the data. That is for reading and writing the data to this shared region. Now let's see the diagram. Now if you'll observe the diagram here, now the process A wants to communicate with process B. Now in that case, what process A will do is it will contribute some part of its memory, and that memory we call it as shared memory. And in some cases, the memory is shared by both the processes. That is, A will contribute some part of memory and B will contribute some part of memory. Now this shared memory will be given some name, or else it is identified by its address location. Now when A wants to send some data to B, what it will do is it will just drop the message in the shared memory, which is known only to the second process, that is process B. Means if there is another process called as C, it can't access the shared memory because it is completely authorized. Now A has full rights of authorizing the shared memory because it is the owner of that particular shared memory. Now A will drop a message to the shared memory and B will get the data from that shared memory. Similarly, if B wants to send some data to A, then it will drop the message in shared memory and A will take the data from that shared memory. So likewise, they'll communicate with each other via shared memory. And in this communication, if you'll observe, they're not at all involving the kernel. Means the communication between these two processes will be a bit faster. Now let's see this. It's faster than message passing as kernel is required only once, that is setting up it. that is at the time of setting the shared memory. And after that, kernel assistance is not required. Now let's see the second one, that is message passing. Now message passing, now let's observe the diagram. Here if you'll observe, process A wants to communicate with process B. Now in this case, what process A is doing is they are going to the kernel, and in the kernel part of memory is allocated for communication between A and B. Now A will drop a message in this part and B will get the data from that part. Similarly, B can drop here and A can get from here. Now it means that for communication between these two, they are taking the help of kernel. Now this makes the communication a bit slower, but it is very easy to set up this communication. Why? Because they simply have to send a request to the kernel to set up a location for these two processes communication. Whereas here they have to dedicate some part of memory, and while dedicating they have to take care of all the factors, how much memory they have, how much they are contributing, how much they need for execution, and so on. Whereas here they need not worry about their memory, they simply have to send a request to the kernel. But the thing is, if A is having some 100 blocks of memory, then 100 times it is going to the kernel, and B will go take the message 100 times. So this is not suitable for lengthy messages. So you can prefer this for a small length of data. That is, when you have small amount of data, then you can prefer this. Now let's see the definition. Communication takes place by exchanging the messages directly between cooperating processes, and it is easy to implement, useful for small amount of data. And for using this, we need some system calls. That is, you need to send a request, then from there you'll get you have to send, after request it will approve that, and after that you'll write the data, and we will read the data. All these read, write, open, close, all these are system calls. So it needs some system calls to operate this kernel's memory area, that is in message passing technique. So that's why it is a bit slower than shared memory. So these are the two important IPC mechanisms that we use for inter-process communication. Now let's see some IPC mechanism examples in Linux operating system. Now in Unix or Linux operating system, for IPC we use a mechanism called as pipes. Now using pipes, you are going to provide IPC. Now let's see what is a pipe and how it is used for inter-process communication. Now we have to remember two things about pipes. The first thing is it is applicable only for related processes. Means related in the sense the processes which are talking to each other need to have some relationship with each other. It means that they should have an ancestral relationship or parent child relationship. Generally it is applicable only for parent and child processes. That is, if a process is there and it creates a child process, then those two have a parent child relationship. In that case we can use pipes here. So this is applicable only for related processes. And one more thing we have to remember, that pipe is a one-way communication only. It means that, let's observe the diagram here. Now just observe the diagram here. Imagine that there is a process here, that is parent process, and there is a child process here. Now pipe is a one-way communication only. It means that the parent process will always writes the data, and child process will always reads the data by using this pipe. Now it is unidirectional, so it will go from parent to child only all the time. Now imagine that the child wants to write the data and parent wants to read. In that case, what you have to do is we have to take another pipe where the child is writing and the parent is reading. So likewise, for two-way communication, we need two pipes. For one-way communication, only one pipe is enough. So this is about pipe. So we have to remember 2 points. One is it is related, it is used between related processes, and it is a one-way communication only. Now we can use a pipe such that one process write to the pipe and the other process reads from the pipe. Now, one more thing we have to remember, that for every pipe we have two descriptors. We call it as file descriptor. So here we will mention it as FD1 and FD0. That is file descriptor 1, file descriptor 0. Ma- Uh, and through file descriptor 1, we'll always write the data to pipe. And through file descriptor 0, we'll always read the data. It means that if you want to write the data to the pipe, we have to always do it on the side of file descriptor 1. It is basically used to identify read end and write end. Now let's see in detail. Generally, we'll imagine that pipe as a virtual file. Virtual file means imaginary file. So we'll imagine that it is a file, and we'll write the data to that file, and the other process will read the data from that virtual file. Next, and one thing we have to remember here, we have learned that parent is writing, child is reading. Now imagine that parent has not yet started this writing process, but child has tried to read something from the pipe. In that case, it will be empty, but this is trying to read something from the pipe. In that case, the process which is reading will be suspended for some time until a process will write something to the pipe. Now let's see how to create the pipe. Now this pipe is created uh, by the syntax like this: int pipe int file descriptors 2. It means that two file descriptors are there in that particular pipe. Now by this statement, the pipe will be created: int pipe and file descriptors. Now parameters, as I told, it has two parameters. One is for writing and 0 is for reading. Now, if you are implementing this statement, you may have two cases. One is it returns 0 on success, means it created pipe and you'll get 0 on success. Now, if you're getting -1, it means that pipe is not created. Now, why it is not created means there are many reasons. One of the reason is a pipe is already existing with the same name, or else there are something wrong with the parameters and so on. So in that case, you'll get -1. So this is syntax of creating a pipe. Now let's try to understand this diagram. Now, as I told, pipe is used between related processes. Now here we have two related processes. One is parent process, the other one is child process. Now the pipe is there. Here actually we are like seeing that parent is communicating with child process. Imagine that for writing we have learned that FD1. Now imagine that parent process is writing to the pipe and child is reading from the pipe. As I told, only from one end you can write, that is from one end you can write and from one end you can read. Okay. Now in this case, now let's see how this pipe is used for communication between two processes. Now the writing end, that is file descriptor 1 end side, if parent is writing, now from the reading end the child will read. Now otherwise the child will write from the writing end, then the parent will read from the reading end. In this way also we can use the pipe for communication. Now let's have a look at the small program which is implementing pipes here. Now let's observe this program. Now here I have took a message size approximately 16, maximum size is 16. Now here just observe, I'm trying to send three messages. Message 1, 2, 3. Now the messages are hello world 1, 2 and 3. Now I have declared some buffer size. Now see here, observe here, int p2, that is this is a pipe creating statement here. Int pipe, and we have seen that parameters, right? So int p of 2 means pipe is created here with two descriptors. Now if pipe of p is less than 0, that is if it is returning -1, then you have to exit, means pipe is not created, otherwise it is created. So by this statement, if you are not getting any -1 0, sorry, any value which is less than 0, it means that pipe is created. If it is created, let's go to the next statement. Now here what I am doing is I am trying to write some data. Now this, while writing, I am using the descriptor value as 1, means from 1 only we have to write the data. So for the pipe at 1 descriptor, I am writing the message 1, maximum size is 16. So that is maximum size I'm writing. So every time while writing, you have to mention the data and along with its length, maximum size, that is default size. Similarly, I'm writing the second message, pipe first descriptor message to maximum size. Third message, same similarly. Now I've written all the three messages from first FD1 descriptor. Now you have to read out all the three one by one. Now for that I'm using a for loop here. Now for I is equal to 0, I less than 3, I plus plus. Now here I'm using a read system called read p of 0. It means that I'm reading from the descriptor 0 side, comma, you are reading into a buffer, so I can call it as input buffer and maximum size of your message. Now I am reading all those three messages were there. From for loop I'm reading all one by one. Now at the same time I'm trying to print that on the screen. So for printing %ls, I'm just printing that input buffer value, whatever you have read in input buffer, that I'm printing here, and after that returning. um, so this is about pipes program. I hope it is clear. Now let's go to the next one. The next mechanism in Unix we'll use is a named pipe, or also called as FIFO. The previous one was just pipe. Now here it is called as named pipe, and as I told, this is also called as FIFO. Now let's see what is named pipe. Named pipe means, let's see the difference between this and the previous one. The previous one was called as pipe. Now, yeah, this one. So this pipe is used for communication between related processes, whereas FIFO is used for communication between processes which may not be related to each other. Means it's not compulsory that parent and child processes only should use that. So they can be used by anyone. And one more thing is this pipe, that is normal pipe, is when it is created, it will be used for communication, and it will be destroyed immediately when the parent and child processes will terminate. Means its lifetime is dependent on the processes, whereas this named pipe, the lifetime is depending on the system. Means it will not be terminating when the process terminates, it will be terminating when the system terminates. So that is the difference. So first difference is it is not between related processes, and the next thing is it lasts long as till the system is up. Now let's see the definition. It is an extension to the traditional pipe concept on Unix. A traditional pipe is unnamed and lasts only as long as the process, whereas a named pipe can last as long as the system is up beyond the life of process. It can be deleted if no longer used. So we have to remember the difference. So this is named pipe, that is FIFO. Sorry, named pipe or FIFO, that is no a general pipe. Now let's go in detail. There we have learned that pipe is nothing but a virtual file, whereas here it is actually a file. So usually a named pipe appears as a file, and generally processes attached to it for inter-process communication. Now FIFO is a special kind of file and the local storage which allows two or more processes to communicate with each other. Now let's see how it is created. Now a named pipe or a FIFO is created by the statement called, that is by the system called make FIFO, that is MK FIFO. MK stands for make. So make FIFO. There we have created pipe using just a simple statement as int pipe, with parameters, whereas here we have to write mk FIFO. By this FIFO will be created. Now let's see how it is done actually. Now when you're writing this mk FIFO, along with that you have to give two parameters. Now let's see what are these two parameters. The first parameter is the path name. Path name means, like I told, FIFO is nothing but a file. So you have to mention that what is the address of that particular file. Now imagine that in my D drive I have a file called CSC. Now CSC file is called as a FIFO, imagine. Now you have to mention its entire location, that is absolute path, you have to mention it here. Uh, that is, I'm creating a FIFO, I'm creating a file for communication. That file address you have to give. Along with that, you have to give the permissions of that particular file. Now let's see what is the what or how you'll write this permission. Now generally in Unix operating system, every file is associated with some permissions. Now let's observe these permissions. What are the permissions a file will generally have? A file will have a read permission, write permission, and execute permission. If read permission is there, the value will be 4. If write permission is there, the value will be 2. And if execute permission is there, the value will be 1. So let's keep this aside. Now let's see what all a file will have. Generally, a file will have permissions related to 3 people. One is user, group, and others. So 3 people's permission will be there in a single file. For a single file, we have to write the values for all these 3 people, 3 categories of people. Now user means he is the owner of the file. Now owner of the file can have read, write, execute permission. So read R, we are representing read as R, write and execute as X. Now imagine that user has all the 3 permissions, that is he can read, he can write, and he can execute. So in that case, what is the value? All the 3 he has, means add up all these 3, so that is 7. Now the next category of people are group. So group means people who are related to the owner. Now the user can give permissions to the group based on their based on his wish. Now imagine that he gave only read write permission for the group of people that he know. Then in that case, the permissions for the group will be only read and write. Now in that case, X will not be there. Instead of X, it will be just underscore. So read write underscore. So read write means 4 plus 2, 6. Now similarly, others. Now for others, he just gave only read permission, imagine. Now in that case, it will be read R underscore underscore. So only R will be there. So that is, read permission is only 4. So for any file, if you have 764 permission, it means that user has all the permissions, group has only read write permissions, others have only read permission. So likewise we have to understand. So every file is associated with this 3-digit number, actually 4-digit number. The first digit will be 0. So the remaining 3 digits will show the permissions of that particular file. So this we have to remember. Now let's see a program on this. Now let's observe this program. Now this is a program which is including all the file related header files, because we are handling the files. Now just observe here. Now I'm taking a FD, that is okay. I'm creating a FIFO here. Now the FIFO statement is make FIFO. So I told that FIFO is created by the statement called MK FIFO, make FIFO. And for make FIFO, we have to give 2 parameters. One is path, another one is permissions. Now path is what? My FIFO. Now what is my FIFO? So in my FIFO, I have stored the path of my file. That is in temporary, that is TMP, you have a file called my FIFO. So this is the path. So that path I'm storing in my FIFO, that name I'm writing here. And next thing is permissions. Now as I told, it is 4-digit number. First is a 0, The next three digits indicates the permission of your file. Like I told, first is user, group, and others. User, all three are six. Six means read and write. So all the three people, user, group, and others, have read write permission only. So they can read write only. They can't execute anything. So this FIFO is given permission of reading the data. So you can read the data from FIFO and you can write the data to the FIFO. So only two permissions I have given. Now let's see how to write the data. I'm opening with the system called as open. Now what I'm opening, my FIFO, that is my FIFO, and it is opened in write only mode. That is WR indicates write only mode. Now I'm opening that. After opening that, this is FD is a file descriptor. It will just mention whether it is successfully opened or not. If it is not successfully opened, then it will show you some error. Now l- let's see the next one. Now it imagine that it is open. After that, you are writing the data. Now what data you are writing for that particular FIFO, that is hello. Hello is a string I'm writing, and size of that message, how much size, maximum size. And after that, I'm closing the FIFO. So this is how you'll use the FIFO for opening and writing the data. Now let's see how you'll read. Well, the same thing. Now for reading the data, you need not create any FIFO. You just need to have the address of your FIFO. So you are not using any make FIFO statement here. So I'm just using the address of that particular FIFO. Now using FD, I'm opening my FIFO in read only mode. After that, I'm reading. So what are the data I'm reading? So that is stored, and I'm calling it as string one. It is my buffer. Maximum size is 80. So at the same time, whatever I'm reading, I'm trying to print it here. Printf user one %ls string one. So whatever you are reading from that, that is printed as here. And then close the FIFO. So this is a program for using the FIFO for communication. So these are the two examples that you have in Linux. Two interprocess mechanisms actually. One is pipe and another one is named pipe, also called as FIFO. So this is about interprocess communication. So let's recall what we have learned in this session. So we have seen that interprocess communication is between only cooperating processes, not between independent processes. And two mechanisms, one is shared memory and message passing. Shared memory is like faster, whereas and it is not involving kernel, whereas message passing is slower, and it because it is involving kernel and it is suitable for small amounts of data. Next, we have seen two case studies, two mechanisms that we have in Unix operating system. One is pipes, which is used between related processes, and one-way communication. And we have seen how to create that using int pipe syntax, and we have seen a program. Then we have seen a named pipe, which is also called as FIFO, which is basically different than normal pipe, which can be used between unrelated processes, and also it will be alive until it is manually terminated, or it is alive until the system is up, not like a pipe which is just alive until the process is terminated. Whereas we'll imagine that pipe is a virtual file, whereas named pipe is a file actually. Now for creating FIFO, we have to use a statement called mkfifo, which along with that you have to give the path of your file and permission. So we have seen how permissions are given in Unix, and two programs, for one for reading, one for writing. Okay, I hope everyone understood IPC in this session. Thank you all.